So the trigger date for paying capital gains is obviously the date that it becomes due and payable. Now, when this is depends on when the disposal actually takes place. Now, depending on how the contract's drafted, this could happen at different times. Now, usually, if you look at a property transaction as an example, the date of the disposal is actually the date of the signature of the contract. That is the day that the property is sold. And people, unfortunately, do not know this and assume that capital gains only becomes payable on the date of transfer, which is not the case. It is on the date of signature. Now, obviously, if there's a suspensive condition, the contract does not come into place, or at least is suspended. Its operation is suspended pending the fulfillment of the suspensive condition. But once the suspensive condition is fulfilled, capital gains becomes payable. So this trigger date that we speak about is actually just the date that it becomes due, right? Now, there are certain types of contracts that change the trigger dates because remember, capital gains can only be paid once the amount is actually determinable. Now, if you're looking at, for example, the base cost, which we'll explain in another show at some point, what the base cost is basically the underlying cost. And usually it's the purchase price and, a couple of allowable expenditures. And obviously the price that you sell the property for, the proceeds from the sale, the difference between the two normally constitute what the capital gains is, and then that amount is going to be taxed, making up capital gains tax. Now, I won't go into detail about how this is calculated. All you need to know basically is normally what you bought it for, what you're selling for, that difference is usually what the capital gains is, bar a few exceptions. Now, to determine capital gains, one would need to know what the proceeds are. And some contracts and some business transactions don't tie the price to a fixed amount. So it's not like the property or the business or whatever it is sold for 1 million rand and it's determinable at that point in time. So certain business transactions, you may even find that people tie to the profits or the rentals received over a number of years, a certain profit share as an example. And because those amounts aren't determinable, you would pay capital gains on an annual basis. You find this specifically when contracts contain certain conditions. That's one example, where the amount doesn't become due and payable now, but only when something takes place in future. And the second example is when the purchase price isn't tied to a fixed amount, but instead is tied to a percentage of an amount or some form of performance over a period of time. Now, very, very, very important. A lot of people then come to me and say, oh, well, that's fantastic news. I don't want to pay capital gains today. Can we put something in there in order to make it last a number of years? And the answer to that, number one, aside from it being illegal, the problem is in proper commercial transactions, it doesn't make sense to put yourself at a disadvantage simply to avoid the payment of tax. That would defeat the purpose, because if this payment is now conditional or it is subject to a certain calculation over, rental received, that means that now you've sold something, but you're stuck in this transaction until eventually these amounts are quantified or determined, and that does not make any commercial sense. So please remember, if it doesn't make commercial sense, don't do it. And SARS will obviously pick it up if it doesn't make commercial sense. So it's not a way of avoiding tax or deferring it. You will get caught and SARS will ask you to pay that amount. And one last thing, if you're selling to yourself or to a trust that's connected to you or to a company that's connected to you, this makes you a connected person, and then the rules are different. So again, be very careful, guys. When it comes to capital gains trigger date, date of signature is the rule. So just understand that as the basic rule and make sure that you plan ahead. So when you sell your property, if you have a large loan that you intend paying off with the proceeds of that sale, just remember that in that year of assessment, you will more than likely have to pay capital gains tax, which you have to budget for.